Hello guys, my name is Christian, and in today's video I'm gonna talk about how you can improve your photography and set your Instagram feed on fire using these 5 simple tips. I'm so ready, I have coffee in my cup. Let's roll the intro and get right into it. So for your Instagram feed to be really interesting to look at, you would need to have a quite diverse set of photos. So you don't post the same kind of material every day. You should have different locations, and you should change the focal length. You should get really close to some topic. You should maybe have some portraits. You can have some animals, some wildlife. You can also just make really beautiful landscape, but it shouldn't be like the same kind of landscape. It shouldn't be all photos from the woods or all from the mountains and so forth. So keeping a diverse feed will get you more followers, and it will keep your existing followers much more engaged in your content. My first tip is add a clear focal point to your photos. There's one problem I see a lot with photos on Instagram, and that is they have a beautiful view, or you have a stunning sunset, but there isn't any focal point. There's no point in the photo where you actually need to look. A good view is not necessarily a good photo. So what do I mean by that? You have the layers going on with trees on, and you have beautiful sunset going on in the background, but there's not a focal point. There's not a really clear thing to look at. Your eyes start to look at the clouds and look a little bit on the trees. It looks at the foreground as well, but there's not really anything to look at. But if we go back to this one, everything just falls in place really nicely, because then you can also see the scale of Rinjani, this the third largest volcano in Indonesia, and it's a beautiful place. And by having Josh running down this hill, all of a sudden you can see how big this mountain is, and you can also see yourself there, really. And that's what it's all about. The viewer can place themselves there. I could take this photo, or I could be the guy running there. Put in a person to add the human scale to make it very clear for the viewer, very fast, what to look at. This is the photo, this is the feeling I'm trying to convey, and then people will engage more with it. Alright, let's look at the next example. Here you have it as well. If you took out the person that is standing on this cliff to the left, which is a buddy of mine called Yes. Yes, but alright. You have obviously the landscape that is out of this world on the Faroe Islands. And you also have this effect even, this is a long exposure. All the water is smoothened out as well. But all these different elements, they don't really add up to anything that is more than beautiful photo. But when you add in a person, then you can see the scale. People they can see themselves in it, and it just makes this final little element that makes us be even more interested in this location. That's one more reason for people to react to your photos on Instagram. Let me just have a look here. Let's have some coffee. Nice. Tip number 2 is crop your photos, and preferably to the 4x5 dimensions. That works really well on Instagram. But it can also be, it doesn't have to be portrait mode, it can also be landscape mode, but just crop your photo so it works better on Instagram. Let's look at the first example here. This is myself standing. It's a drone shot from Switzerland. This is a very easy crop. It's very obvious what to do, because you just leave out everything on the side. And this, actually I haven't posted this on Instagram yet, so I don't know if it will work, but I have a pretty good idea about that it will get pretty good engagement when I post this one. I'm 100% sure. Let's go to the next one. Look at this one. This is just a mess. Look at these branches coming in here, Look at the log coming in. Look at how it's just like an empty space up in the right. What you really want to be looking at in this photograph are the tree trunks and the reflection in this beautiful, beautiful river. So what I did was I took the same photo and I cropped it to 4x5, and all of a sudden it is so much more calm. It works so much better, and it's so much easier for people to have a good experience looking at this photo. Just cut into the important part of the picture And remember to always look at your photos like that. Always have a second look at your material and see if you can squeeze the last juice out of all those photos that you have taken. This one is also a raw file. Nusa Penida is this gorgeous island that is off the coast of Bali in Indonesia. And you have probably seen tons of photos from this location. But I tried to do something a little bit different here. I was shooting down on the beach from a very high cliff. And again, I didn't do a very good job here, you know, because what I really want is something like this. So I cropped the photo and got rid of all the negative space in the right side of the photo. And just, you know, looking at this now, you have a little bit of foreground with the leaves, and that creates a little bit of depth into the photos. And then you actually only look at these 6 men playing around in the waves. One might say, what happened to the 2 ladies there? I took them out, and it was a photo that got quite a lot of really nice engagement on Instagram. All right. Tip number 3, change the perspective of your photos. What I mean by that is that you should incorporate a telephoto lens into your kit. It will help you so much to change the perspective of the photos, and you can compress things even more. Using a 70-200, for example, will change the way you see the world, it will change the way you shoot the world, and it will change your Instagram feed dramatically, and I'll show you some good examples on that. Here you have a surfer walking on Balangang beach in Bali, and he looks so close to that wave, and the reason why he does that is that this is shot on 200mm. What a telephoto lens does is that it brings the different elements closer together, so it looks like that wave is just behind that person. But if I had shot this on a 24mm, he would be very, very, very small for one thing, but he would also, you could see that he's very far away from that wave. And by using a 200mm in this shot, you are creating the illusion that all the elements are really tight together, and it just makes the whole thing a much more impressive photo. Next. This is just to show the 2 different shots from the exact same location. Josh is standing on Rinjani in Indonesia, and I'm trying to, I think this is a 24mm, I'm trying to get the whole scene in. The crater lake, the top of the mountain, the sunset that is like flashing through from behind that gorge over here, and for me it just doesn't work. It's just too unfocused. You can't see Josh, and you can make much better compositions of the top of the mountain. So this for me just one of those examples that is not working at all. But what I want to show you with this is that you keep an eye on the ridge line with the trees. You will see now what I mean, because then I zoomed into 200mm and I focused on these trees that are just beautifully backlit by the sunshine. And so this is a beautiful detail shot that you would never ever be able to get in any way if you were trying to do it with a wide angle. All of a sudden you can create photos that you really were not able to do without. And for me, that just makes being out in the nature so much more interesting. And as a photographer, you start to see a lot of very interesting small details that can be really, really beautiful in their own right. What is it that create the diversity in your Instagram feed? That is like one day you have a grand landscape, you're showing the whole thing, and then the next day, whoom, you have this bird, and it just looks great, you know. So if I should give a little bonus tip, is include wildlife, include animals in your Instagram feed much more, because people engage a lot with it, and it just looks very fascinating as well. Okay, tip number 4. Create depth in your photos. Use foreground, middle ground, and background to your advantage. And one really simple trick to enhance your photos is to use foreground. Preferably also middle ground and background, but at least include some foreground that will create this like 3D effect in your photos. Like in this one, if you took out the flowers in the foreground, it's still a great photo. You have the lake and you have You have Jackson standing there on the cliff, and you have these a little bit blown out mountains in the background, but I kind of like it in this photo. But you're adding in these yellow summer flowers that are all over the Alps in the summer. This is from Switzerland. It just makes the whole thing more idyllic. It makes it more interesting to look at, and then you have this powerful color as well. This is from the Dolomites. What I really like about this is that the church here is the foreground, and the sun rays and the trees and the forest there is like the middle ground, and then you have the beautiful Dolomite mountains in the background. This is another destination that's been shot a lot. Not so much anymore, because I know the farmer that owns this house, he's going mad about it. So he has been putting fences up, and you just don't go there. You have the yellow and the blue, just goes really well together. And again, you have the flowers in the foreground, you have the house as the middle ground, and you have the beautiful lagoon as the background. Now it gives the photo a depth that makes the viewer being like sucked into the photo. Instead of just looking at this flat image, all of a sudden it's a photo that you can travel into. And that's really the reason why you want to create depth of field in your photos. Next one here is one of Jackson on Rinjani in Lombok. We are at the Crater Lake, and again, this is a beautiful landscape. You have it's almost mind-blowing. You have, you're on the top of a mountain. You have this crater lake, and inside the crater you have another small volcano in the background there. Even looks like there's a little bit smoke coming out of it. And again, this would be a beautiful photo even without Jackson in it. I'm using a little bit of the green grass in the foreground. Jackson, is the middle ground, and then the background is this little insanely beautiful crater inside a crater. And you're just looking into this crater, and you're just thinking, oh, how did this happen? So beautiful. How am I even going to photograph this? Because there's so many elements here, and I need to make the whole thing work. And by adding in Jackson in this photo, I created some depth of field in these layers. Same with this one from the Faroe Islands. I absolutely love this photo. I took it like a month ago on my last workshop on the Faroe Islands, and this is Jay. The landscape here is beautiful in itself. You can even take out Jay from this photo and it would still be a beautiful photo. But if you took out the foreground, it would be a little bit of a boring photo, because then you would only have the background. And that's what you don't want in your photography. You don't just want a background. Another quick example from Lombok, shooting these two paragliders. Again, this is a raw file that I took the moments before, and I just took this photo and I looked at it and I was like, I didn't feel this photo at all. I didn't feel it. But by including these trees in the foreground, makes the two paragliders come even closer. And then all of a sudden you look at the foreground, you look at the paragliders in the middle ground, and now you really want to look at the background, which is the landscape of the southern coast of Lombok. And when you go back to this one, you don't have this depth of field. It's what I would call a flat photo, and that's what you don't want. All right, going on. The last example in tip number 4. Sometimes I try to create depth of field by using a foreground, and sometimes it just doesn't work. I tried to include these trees in the foreground because I thought it would look really great to have this silhouetted trees on the sides, and then this absolutely stunning piece of rock that is called the Half Dome. But as you can see, it's kind of a mess, and all of a sudden the foreground and the background, they're fighting for the attention. What are you actually supposed to look at? What's the guy really trying to show me here? I just found out that after I took a few shots that this was not a photo that needed a foreground, so I just ended up taking this one. This is like 8 minutes later, the sun has set. This has no depth of field because there's no foreground. Always try to work with foreground, but also take some photos without foreground, because sometimes it just works better, and then you can choose in the post process. All right, tip number 5, create action in your photos. Catch the moment. Catch a moment. Shoot to catch those moments where people are actually walking, or they are like in motion. Make people walk in the photo. Tell them to walk back and forth a few times and just try to shoot in that moment. I can just quickly go back to the one with Jackson in the Crater Lake. It looks like he's just standing, but he's actually not standing, he's actually walking, and I'm trying to catch him in the right moment. This photo is a really good example of catching a moment. This is a moment that no matter how many times we would try, I would never be able to get this moment of these 4 of my friends standing and looking at a drone on the top of Rinjani. All those smiles at the same time, and that's just one of those moments that I love to catch, because for me photography at its best is creating moments that you can never repeat, really. It will always bring a big smile to my face when I see this. Here as well, getting myself into the shot and walking up and down in front of maybe it's called Yosemite Falls. Instead of just standing there with the back looking at the fall, which would be a great image, I'm walking up and down this rather steep boulders and rocks that is lying in front of this waterfall. You can clearly see that I'm walking, and this is an action photo rather than just a person sitting or standing and looking at the waterfall. It just gets this a little bit more dynamic into the photo that for me works. And now to this photo from India. This is for me also a moment that I could never ever do one more time. Even though I met this guy tomorrow and he was taking a shower, I would not be able to catch this exact moment. These kind of authentic moments that you see in the street when you're doing street photography or you're doing like travel photography, it's really nice fond moments to capture. It's not these kind of photos you see very often, and people are reacting really nicely to seeing a genuine, real moment, really, because there's so many photos on Instagram that are not like real, but this is a real moment and people react really positively to these kind of photos. So go out and do more street photography and capture real moments like this. This is a quick photo of a boy in Kyrgyzstan, and this is clearly not a posed photo. He's walking towards me, he's carrying these 2 small goats. The focal point of this photo is this little boy with these 2 lambs. And the way that he looks at me is like this is a moment, because if he was posing he would never look at me like this, and for me that makes the whole thing work really well. Also from Kyrgyzstan, 1 second before this photo, the horse was standing on the left side of the road, and 1 second after this photo was taken, it was on the way down the hill on the right side of the photo. And this is the only one where the legs are like this and it's framed perfectly within the road on a white background. And for me, this is a timeless photo that I could probably never take one more time. It's very dear to me. And I will never forget this moment that just came out of nowhere. We parked the car to buy some candy or some Coke or something, and all of a sudden I saw this horse coming down the road, and it just turned, for me it's a true moment that is very difficult to replicate. Remember to go for these moments when you travel. Talking about horses, this is for me also a moment that I probably will, even though I went to Iceland like 10 times, I will never ever be able to take this photo one more time. This is like a band photo, and all 3 of them look straight into the lens. And as you can see here, if I go back to the raw files from that encounter I had with all these horses, you can see that there are so many. I took so many photos of these horses. I feel this deep connection with these horses. When on my next trip to Iceland, I will definitely try to shoot I will try to photograph horses. Of course I will not be shooting horses, of course not. I would never. This starts out something like this, you know, and you can it just goes on and on and on and on and I never, it was so difficult for me to catch anything I thought was useful, but here all of a sudden, boom, there it is. And it's by no means a perfect photo at all. You know, the framing is a little bit off and the focus is not totally nailed or anything, but that doesn't matter. In the end, I love a photo like this, and it's probably still the one photo in my Instagram feed that has received the most comments. I think it's more than 250 comments or something like that. It's insane because it's a moment and people can feel that it's a moment, and that's why it's performing so well. Always try to go and shoot, because it will take a lot of shots to get this shot. Those are the 5 tips that I'm giving you right now, and I guarantee you this will help your photography, it will improve your photography, and it will make your Instagram feed look much better. Stay tuned, much more to come. And if you like this video, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the little notification bell so you get a notification every time I upload a video. And then, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.